I don't want to be that guy, but Alexander Volkanovski is kind of the definition of a paper champion. And that hurts because I was excited that he won. Now, before we get into this episode, who do you want to see Alexander Volkanovski fight next? Evloev's my pick, but Yair got a good win in. Lerone Murphy, I guess you could make a case for. It's really nobody else. But yes, is Alexander Volkanovski a paper champion? By definition, yes. Who was the champion before? Ilia Topuria. And he vacated the belt. He didn't, take it from Ilia Topuria. So, yeah, he's a paper champion, and that kind of sucks, fellas, because I was very, very happy about it. Then I was thinking about it on my, so I was going to bed. I'm like, he's kind of a paper champion, and it sucks. It does. It sucks because I really, really, really like Volkanovski. He's been one of my favorites for a little while, but yeah, he is. Granted, you can't fault him for fighting for the title again, but here we are, paper champion Volkanovski. It is here. This fight, though, talking about Ilia Topuria and Alexander Volkanovski, like, you could tell that Alexander Volkanovski was a lot better prepared for this fight. There was a lot less stress on his shoulders for some reason or another. If you go back and watch the Topuria fight, he had just been knocked out by Islam just 2 months earlier, came back way too early. I'm not saying that Topuria would have, lost to Volkanovski. I actually think Topuria was always going to beat Alexander Volkanovski. I feel like that was just destiny at this point. But that Volkanovski we saw last night, while aged and he didn't look as good, was still very, a lot better than what we saw against Topuria. Remember, Volkanovski kind of leading with his jab. He's leaning with his chin in that first fight, kind of really getting worked up. This fight, he looked a lot better. There were points where he did get caught by Diego Lopes, like Diego Lopes is going to do. But against Ilia Topuria, he really did look bad. Again, I'm not saying Topuria would have lost to Volkanovski should he have fought him on this night, but I am saying that this would have been a more interesting fight. Ilia Topuria still would have beat Alexander Volkanovski. He just didn't feel like the old Volkanovski, the one that fought Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega and Max Holloway that last time. Like, the peak Alexander Volkanovski is for sure gone. He is for sure gone. And a lot of the problems I have with him was, like, some of his decision making was actually kind of weird too. He did a good job of making sure, Islam and Ilia Topuria really did take Alexander Volkanovski, put him against the fence, and hurt him against the fence, right? They did a good job of that, and that's where Diego Lopes had his best success. But, he did a good job of moving laterally to stay away from that problem. He got caught a couple times against the fence, but once he realized, I'm here, I got to get out. Now, what I did have a problem with what Volkanovski was doing was he was hooking with a hooker. Literally, Diego Lopes has jab and then hooks and uppercuts, right? He very, very meat and potatoes type of striking. You're going to hook with him, and it did a lot of justice for Alexander Volkanovski, but I felt like that was a risk that he really didn't need to take with the type of weapons that he had. He didn't rely quite as much on, like, the tricks, like the whole stepping through to a lead right hook into southpaw from orthodox. He didn't do much of that. He switched stances a lot to target the low kicks for sure. But as the fight went on, he really relied more on, okay, we're going to get in these pocket exchanges. I'm going to dictate when this fight happens, how this fight happens. I'm going to dictate when these exchanges end. And a lot of times you'd see Volkanovski and Lopes, boom, 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 crash into each other. Then you got Volkanovski dipping under and coming over the top of Diego Lopes. And I think that really did, that helped him a lot. And there was a couple times where he would dip to the outside and land a big, rear hand, be it southpaw or an orthodox, right or left, right? There's a big rear hand that, sometimes it would hurt Diego Lopes, and Lopes made good adjustments on that. But good on Volkanovski. We know he's a smart fighter. As for what's next, again, I mentioned I like the Movsar Evloev fight. That's got to be really the only option for him. Because, you look at the rankings. Let's go over to the web and take a look at the rankings, guys, if y'all really want to know why I'm saying this. Featherweight right here. Let's go. If I can get it right. Can y'all see that? No, you can't. Zoom in. There we go. All right. You got Topuria, no longer, so it'll be Volkanovski at the top. Max Holloway at 2. He's moving up to lightweight. Diego Lopes just beat him. Movsar Evloev is the next deserving one. He'll move up to probably number 2 with Volkanovski number 1. Holloway might not be on the list. Yair Rodriguez, you can make an argument for, I guess. He'll move up a spot to 5 once Topuria's gone. Ortega, no. Arnold Allen hasn't really proved it. Lerone Murphy, this is why I included him in that graphic earlier. Yeah, I could see Lerone kind of weaseling his way in there if it's a timeline thing. But, like, Sterling needs a win. Emmett, no. Chikazdi, no, definitely not. Zalal's not there. Bryce Mitchell's on his way out. Cater and then Dan Ige. So, there's options out there, but it really is just Movsar Evloev. And I like that fight because I'm a Alexander Volkanovski fan, and I think that it's a winnable fight for him. If we're being honest, Movsar Evloev does not have the heaviest of hands, and we've seen that heavy hands is really what. Shout out Heavy Hands, by the way. That great MMA podcast, been around for forever. But heavy hands is really kind of the Achilles heel of Alexander Volkanovski. And Evloev, he's a wrestler, but we've seen Alexander Volkanovski face Islam Makhachev, that first, probably the best fight of all time with Islam Makhachev. We see him do well against the wrestling there. So I'm interested to see if Evloev can have some answers that Islam Makhachev couldn't, which would be wild. But it's reasonable to believe that too, because Islam Makhachev's not the fundamental same wrestler that Movsar Evloev is. So let's see what kind of questions that he brings forth here. Now, Diego Lopes, he fought well-ish. We know, I mentioned in the MMA draw that Diego Lopes, he fights like a man with a mullet, basically. He's hectic, he's wild, and he's crazy. I think that was a little different this fight, and it's understandable. Lopes showed a lot of respect to Alexander Volkanovski in the simple fact that he's like, hey, this guy's going to be durable. I'm not going in there and going crazy just so I can get tired. So no, this fight wasn't quite as hectic as his previous fights, but if you expected him to be, I don't know what to tell you, because that would have been a stupid game plan, and that would have been a really big, great showing for Alexander Volkanovski. And I don't think that was the best idea. I think the game plan that Diego Lopes brought to the table was the right idea. I didn't want to see him wrestle. I didn't want to see any of the wildness from him. I wanted to see him fight well and crazy in spots, okay? Now, that may have cost him the fight because he didn't choose enough spots, and that's great on Volkanovski. A couple of the rounds were very close, but I don't think you can justify any scorecard as a Diego Lopes scorecard. That is, this was a learning fight for Diego Lopes, and Lopes is going to grow from this. Now, let me check real quick. I forget how old Diego Lopes is, but 26-7, a lot of experience, but a few losses. He's 30. I don't know if he'll ever bounce back from that, make it to the title again, but at the same time, like, this fight, he did show that, hey, I can be calculated and measured, even with the limited amount of tools I have. I would have liked to see more body kicks from from Diego Lopes to kind of, change how Volkanovski approaches this fight. We know Volkanovski is real good off the kick. We saw that with the Rodriguez fights, but at the end of the day, I did say a couple times, or everywhere pretty much, that I have a really bad feeling that Diego Lopes is going to win this fight. Not bad as in like Diego Lopes sucks or anything like that. He surely doesn't suck, but I like Volkanovski. I have my favorites. I'm not a journalist, so I don't have to I don't have favorite. I have favorite fighters. I love fighters. I love watching fights, and I have specific fighters that I enjoy watching fight. And Alexander Volkanovski is one of those. And I did think that Diego Lopes is going to come in here and kind of son Volkanovski. Dude, he was so much bigger than Volkanovski. Again, though, with the Islam fight, so was Islam, and Volkanovski is such a good fighter. He's such a smart fighter that Alexander Volkanovski can handle that size disadvantage, especially with that orangutan arms that he has. I do think Diego Lopes will learn from this. I think he's become a better fighter because of this, but I also don't think that Diego Lopes really has what it takes to beat a Alexander Volkanovski at this point in either of their career. Maybe down the line, yeah, but there's some new fighters coming up, some Yusuf Zalals, Pitbull's here. You've got Evloev, like, who's already beat Diego, even though it's like a short notice fight. I'd like to see how that I'd like to see where they go from here. Give it Yair versus Diego Lopes. That's a chaotic fight, right? That'd be a really good one. But all in all, good fight, really good fight. This whole card was actually really good. So let's go into some more of it. Is Paddy Pimblett, boom, 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 a legit contender? Yeah, he dominates Michael Chandler. And I picked Paddy Pimblett to win this on Verdict. You can go check my verdict out, Blaine Henry TFL. I picked Paddy Pimblett to win this fight because I was like, Pimblett's a little more measured. Aside from Michael Chandler throwing a huge looping overhand that connects with him pulling straight back like that, like Paddy Pimblett has the tendency to do. I can see him panic shooting and Paddy really starting to take away this fight as the rounds go on. This was a 5-round fight. What we got was completely different from what I expected, though. So, Paddy Pimblett beat the snot out of Michael Chandler. I mean, you see that picture at the end of the round, or at the end of the fight when Paddy was about to finish him, and Paddy's like on top of him, and Michael Chandler's looking up with a bloody face. It reminds me of Vikings. Remember that show Vikings when Ivar the Boneless had the red face and he's grinning, and oh my gosh, yes. That was a great scene, by the way. Oh, I love Vikings. Anyways, we'll stop there. He beat the snot out, and it was a lot of kicks that led the way. We saw this against Bobby Green. Paddy's realizing that he's not the best striker, and his bread and butter's going to be a kick-heavy game. And we've seen this style before out of an Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling's like, I'm going to kick you. What are you going to do? I'm going to kick you. You're going to come tie up with me? Please, for the love of God, please come tie up with me. Paddy has adopted the same plan in the last 2 fights. I mean, I can't get enough of it. 23-3 now. Paddy Pimblett has beat Bobby Green. The Ferguson fight, blah. Jared Gordon probably should have lost it. Jordan Leavitt was a great win. Since coming to the UFC, though, he's been nothing but spectacular. He's been nothing short of spectacular. Paddy Pimblett is a star in the making here. I don't know if he beats an Islam Makhachev. I don't think he does. Like, Islam might go down as the greatest lightweight of all time. Like, that's where we're at with him. Two title defenses more, and you've got to say, like, Islam's the most accomplished, the greatest lightweight ever. Like, that's no doubt. And if it is against an Arman Tsarukyan, who's a tough fight, and a Paddy Pimblett, because Paddy could go on to fight Charles Oliveira next, or Justin Gaethje, and a win off of those two would very much make sense for Pimblett to go in there and fight. Man, like, let's talk about how big Paddy Pimblett's gotten. He used to fight at 145 and 135. Even he had a fight at 130. Nah, granted that was when he was young, but he's, I don't want to say bricked up. Y'all know what that means, but he's jacked up now. He's a big guy. He's stocky. He's got these long, lanky legs, and sure, he still has problems with his striking, leaving his chin up high like he always does. But the kicks are kind of negating that, and that really did hurt Michael Chandler. But what hurt Michael Chandler the most was probably his age. He sat for 2 years waiting on Conor McGregor, waiting on the biggest payday of his life, only for Conor McGregor to pull out of the fight and never to have that fight ever again. Dirty on McGregor's part, right? Very dirty. But, I mean, McGregor's never fighting again, and it was kind of obvious after the Poirier fight, like, man, he might not fight again. Sure enough, he loses to Charles Oliveira. He loses to Paddy Pimblett now. He's definitely on the way out. I mean, he's like almost 40 years old. The dude's old. He's basically dead in MMA fighting terms, right? I don't think that this win for Paddy Pimblett is what everybody's making it out to be. Oh, he's a legitimate contender. Like, no. Slow your roll. It's an old Michael Chandler. He's beat Bobby Green, old Tony Ferguson, and old Michael Chandler. He hasn't beat a Justin Gaethje, who despite being old, nobody's been able to beat Justin Gaethje or Dustin Poirier. Despite being on one more fight in his career, nobody's been able to beat Dustin Poirier except for like Islam. Arman Saryukin hasn't been an Arman Saryukin. So while I think, Paddy Pimblett is certainly a promising prospect at lightweight and will definitely be in the top 10, maybe even number 6, I can see him, losing to those guys. A Max Holloway coming in there, jab his face up, because Max Holloway is so hard to take down, right? I really don't know what his ceiling is yet. Paddy Pimblett, that is. I do know that he's a very good fighter, and he is improving, though. And that's all you can really ask for out of him. You come out, get better, test yourself against a better competition. That's the name of the game, and he so far has proved it over and over again. What is he in the UFC real quick? Let me pull it up, because it's quite impressive what he's done, 7-0. And I mean, the Luigi Venturamini fight, yeah, he should have won that, and he did. Jordan Leavitt was a fun option. He should have lost the Jared Gordon fight, if we're going to be honest, but he didn't. The Tony Ferguson is a ghost. Bobby Green, he's a bit of an opportunistic fight for Paddy Pimblett. Yeah, Green was ranked, but this Chandler fight, this is a big step up, despite Chandler being, what he is, old and decrepit, geriatric, basically. Yair Rodriguez and Patricio Pitbull. I get the brothers mixed up all the time. Yair Rodriguez, he kept Pitbull at bay with his kicks. Pitbull obviously coming over from Bellator, being the most accomplished Bellator fighter in history. Notice that they said Bellator a lot on this broadcast too. They said Bellator a lot on this, and you get why, because they're basically dead. Kept him at bay with the kicks. Yair Rodriguez got these flashy kicks that are hard to time, and I said Pitbull really needs to step in and land something big and looping while he can get Yair Rodriguez on one leg. That didn't happen. Instead, Rodriguez just kept kicking at him, kept poking at him, and Pitbull really couldn't find a way in. And if we're being honest, he was very, very complacent, especially in that first round. He was too complacent, if we want to be honest. He's too old now. He can't handle this anymore. It's game over for him, man. He came to UFC at freaking 38 years old. What do you expect? UFC, they're smart, man. This is smart. One Championship has been doing this for a while, but UFC's like, oh, okay. Let's see how good these Bellator fighters are. They don't want the Bellator guys coming over and winning things, so they get MVP at 40. They get Pitbull at almost 40. Volkov has been here for forever, so we're not going to count him. Aaron Pico, probably a glass cannon. I don't know. There's no point in this. So, what's next for Yair? I did mention the title shot, and I did mention Diego Lopes. And another option I think would be absolutely electric would be against Jean Silva. And we'll be talking about him in a second. I like that because Jean Silva's shorter. Yair Rodriguez is a very weird, tough fight. And it is a top 5 fight for Jean Silva. I have a hard time. Yeah, it would be a top 5 fight for Jean Silva. So I like that for Jean Silva. I don't like it so much for Yair Rodriguez, who probably deserves a higher ranked fight. But speaking of Jean Silva, good googly moogly, we got choo choo baby. Ooh, all aboard the hype train of Jean Silva. What a performance. He choked out the Bryce Mitchell, Nobody likes Bryce Mitchell. And I was talking about to Tavon Anthony in our live stream on Friday, and we talked about, he's still a good fighter. Bryce Mitchell, he is still a good fighter. But Jean Silva came in there and showed that, hey, I'm this great fighter. And he beat him via ninja choke. Crazy. So we started off the fight with Bryce Mitchell really kind of kicking the leg of Jean Silva, like the lead leg, kind of kicking at it, poking at it and stuff. And it's very early that he wanted, very apparent to me that he wanted to kind of inhibit the motion of Jean Silva, because Jean Silva is very explosive. So he's kicking at the leg, and he's in southpaw, so he's front kicking the leg, basically, just oblique kicking, just kind of blip, blop, hitting the leg. And then Jean Silva starts to try and catch the kick. Okay, Bryce Mitchell says, no problem. We're going to orthodox now. We're in a mirrored or closed stance matchup. I'm doing the outside kick. So he had the right idea, but John Silva started catching that too. So Mitchell shoots, can't get the takedown, or does, and John Silva gets up. John Silva jumps the guillotine. Yeah, not the best idea, but I mean, he got up from it. So like no harm, no foul, I guess. But once he started catching the low kick and denying the takedowns, Bryce Mitchell really did start to slow down. And you could see at the end of that first round that Silva, I thought John Silva was like, really kind of timid against Bryce Mitchell, catching in the clinch, because we saw him against Charles Jourdain, getting taken down and beat up before he managed to knock out Jourdain. But the failed takedowns really did tire out Bryce Mitchell. It really did. And that's how you beat him. Like Bryce Mitchell was diving for takedowns against Ilia Topuria. And that's how, Topuria beat him. Mitchell got tired, and Topuria's just that much better of a fighter. Josh Emmett has a nuclear warhead in his right hand. So that doesn't really, but John Silva has probably not quite a nuclear warhead, but, a massive right hand. And sure enough, that knockdown sequence was magnifique. What he did was he throws this looping lead left over Mitchell, and that causes Mitchell to lean to his right, and he lined up the right hand just perfectly. Just boom, right down the pipe, and it put Bryce Mitchell on the bottom. And Mitchell managed to get up, but shot the takedown, the panic shot, and John Silva, look, ninja choke. You got your Harari choke, your Judy choke, and your ninja choke. But the pressure in round 2 really did force the panic shots. So John Silva really did come out and start to pressure a lot more than that first round. And that's because Bryce Mitchell realized, hey, I got to stop kicking. Bryce Mitchell knows if he gets John Silva on the ground, it's over, especially if John Silva's on top and he's raining down elbows. So, really good performance from John Silva. The pressure was great in round 2, and that's really what broke Bryce Mitchell. Dominic Reyes, man, had a really nice knockout. And that's, 2 wins on the trot for Dominic Reyes. Let's go over to the web real quick, fellas. 2 wins on the trot for Dominic Reyes right here. Who did he beat? After that long, 4 fights, just losing to like Ryan Spahn, Yuri Prohaska was like an understandable win, but now 3 wins on the trot. Dustin Jacoby, Anthony Smith, and Nikita Krylov. So, 3 really good wins back-to-back for Dominic Reyes. Yeah, I felt bad for Dominic Reyes with those 4 fights, because it was like, he's trying and he just really can't get anything, going there. Let's see here. Dan Ige and Sean Woodson. I gave Woodson a lot of hard times. He showed he's a decent fighter here, but Ige really did manage to take away the length of Sean Woodson, because he's built like the Slender Man. And, he got up in his grill. He just really started beating him up dirty boxing style. Verna Jandiroba and Yan Zhaojian was actually a really fun fight. Verna Jandiroba is legit, boys. She is really a good fighter, and she's gotten better. Go look at this. Look at this. So she lost to Mackenzie Dern, beat Murata, which, that's usually what happens there, and then lost to Amanda Ribas. And you thinking to yourself, like, man, how far is this girl going to go? Diving for takedowns. But since then, she's really become like this grindy, just drag you to the floor fighter. Beats Angela Hill. Marina Rodriguez, which is a really good win. Lupe Godinez, like, that's a step back for her, kind of, but it's still a good win. And then Amanda Lemos armbar was her next best win. And now we got this Yan Zhaojian fight, and, man, she looked great, just grinding Yan Zhaojian into the dirt and kind of giving her as hard of a problem as she's ever had. Like, nobody's finished Yan Zhaojian like that. Nobody. Not even Zhang Wei Li has done that. So I'm really excited. I want to see how Verna Jandiroba matches up against Zhang Wei Li. I don't think Jandiroba can beat Zhang Wei Li necessarily, but it is an interesting matchup. We just saw Zhang Wei Li like dominate Tatiana Suarez, the wrestler Tatiana Suarez, So I'm not as optimistic about it, but you know, Chase Hooper, you know, he sons Jim Miller, man. I actually had Jim Miller to win this fight. I thought Jim Miller was, you know, an older, more experienced fighter, and Chase Hooper wasn't quite there to beat these old vets yet, and we've seen him struggle with the vets in the past. But Chase Hooper did a really good job of not really... He's not as strong as Jim Miller. Obviously, Jim Miller's got the old man strength, right? But what he did was, you know, he was technical with it, managed to get Miller to the ground, and really kind of just beat him up. So it's probably, guys, it's probably time for Jim Miller to retire. He's just not got it anymore, and it's sad, really. The Bobby Green fight, I was hoping that he could have won that. He couldn't. It's time, you know. He's been in the UFC for a century, and here we are now, you know. What else was on this card here? Julian Erosa is real nice, man. Nice knee, elbow, and punches to knock out Darren Elk. Elka's never been knocked out before, so that was crazy. Alexander got a nasty knockout over Cedric Dumas. You know, whatever. Sumadarji. It's always good to see Alexander get a win, because Alexander's just a quality fighter. He's not the greatest, but he's a quality fighter. Sumadarji beat Mitch Raposo in a very close fight. Marco Tulio beat Treson Gore. Gore's just not good, man. He is just not a good fighter at all. I mean, if you're losing to him, you ought to be out. But like, Brian Battle beat him, Cody Brundage, and now Marco Tulio. Yeah. And then Nora Cornwell and Haley Cowan. That was the opening fight on the card. All in all, really good night of fights, guys. Like, this was a fun one. There wasn't many times where I was like, oh, this is boring. Even like the decisions were actually kind of fun. So I can get behind more of this. And with the TV deal expiring, or the exclusive negotiated rights for the UFC expiring Tuesday, we might get us a new home and a new format to where we have to have nicer fights. Luke Thomas mentioned that, like, you know, with boxing, you have to wonder, like, are they going to cannibalize their own market and or have less UFC events to have boxing events, kind of alternate maybe 2 and 2 a month. That would be pretty cool. You could let go of all these crappy fighters. Anyways, look, guys, right here, this one. Camera's backwards. This playlist, MMA. We talk about fighting. You want to like this video? If you're here this long, you must like it. We're almost 30 minutes in. You know, just follow this video, subscribe, like me. Support the channel, and I've got a new episode of Fight Finders coming, episode 7. That link's in the description too. So that'll be out soon, and yeah, get caught up, follow this show, and see you guys next time.